Okay. Thank you everybody who signed in, and welcome to Started from the Bottle Volume 5. We have a really interesting panel today about the environmental repercussions of everything that is happening in the country right now, from the lockdown to years of, a failing system that is now backfiring once again with a returning garbage crisis, along with the economic crisis. So we've got a lot of things on our plate right now. We have Najib Moutran from Chateau Trois Collines, but he also has a very vast background in the wine industry, and we'll get into that in a bit. We have Antoine Abou Moussa, who is from Compost Balade and Raimondo, and he'll explain the difference between those two in a bit. He's an environmental engineer. And we have Ziad Chaker, another environmental engineer from Cedar Environmental, and you might know him from a TEDx talk from a few years back, and kind of a bunch of different initiatives across the country when it comes to recycling and the environment. Let's start with Najib. Maybe you can give us just a quick background as to how you came to be in the wine industry and what you know about the field. And then we can jump to Antoine and Ziad about your latest projects and kind of where you're at right now. And we'll move from there as to what is going on with this country.
What is not going?
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy. I thank you for this initiative. And I thank also Trois Collines for doing the connection between us. So I am agronomist. I had my master's degree in agricultural economics, and worked in starting with the UNDP in the Baalbek Hermel project for illicit crop replacement, and doing a lot of activities in the wine business since the early 90s. And today I joined Trois Collines very recently, and which is a very good sign that even due to the crisis, you can still find job opportunities. And Trois Collines are very, very active, and they are very active on the environmental side. We'll talk about this in a while. But concerning my experience, I lecture at several universities. I give courses on sensorial analysis, how to evaluate wine using your senses, how to trace quality. I worked a lot in Lebanon and abroad, starting wineries, developing marketing channels, private labels, doing consultancies, and so on. So feel free to ask any question you want or you need to clear our topic tonight. So I'll be talking mainly about Trois Collines and their organic approach. They're very exclusive. Apart from being today part of the team, recently part of the team, I will tell you about the experience of Trois Collines, that is very young winery and doing exceptional things. So I leave the floor to my colleagues.
Antoine, you want to go next?
Sure, why not? Okay, so my name is Antoine Abou Moussa. My academic background, I have a environmental engineering degree, a BS in chemistry, and a university diploma in social entrepreneurship. And on the professional side, I founded Compost Balade with Fondation Diane and my partner Marc, who is CEO currently. The company focuses on small to medium scale solutions for organic waste management. And I am currently the manager of Raimondo by Fondation Diane, which is an industrial hub that is trying to create a focal point for all the innovation in the green industry. And just lately, I started also some projects in Colombia to turn organic waste into compost and biochar, especially for the palm oil industry.
Okay, and those kind of work hand in hand, I guess. Compost Balade and Raimondo, you kind of get
definitely. I mean,
from each other, I guess.
They do, because both are focused on the innovation in green industries, and composting is a green industry, and it's seeing a lot of innovation in it because small to medium scale used to be left for if you want, personal initiative, but we're trying to make it more uniform and more scientific.
Mm-hmm. And Ziad, what's going on over there?
Hi. I'm Ziad Abi Chaker. I'm also an environmental engineer and an industrial engineer. I have 2 BS degrees in engineering and a master's and a combined program of environmental and industrial engineering. Of course, I work at Cedar Environmental. I started Cedar Environmental about 30 years ago, and we've developed all necessary technologies to achieve zero waste in municipal solid waste, in the municipal solid waste category. And right now we are, of course, we're in the midst of yet another waste crisis, which is definitely, it's not a technical crisis. This is due, of course, to the corruption and the ineptitude of those handling the file, and the way it looks that seems the crisis is here to stay.
Which crisis are you talking about?
Huh?
Which crisis are you talking about?
Oh no, Corona will die off very soon. We will be left off with a garbage crisis and a deep economic crisis, which will actually, there's always a silver lining in times of crises. I think the economic crisis will have us as Lebanese turn more into our creative collective minds and, get off our asses and start making stuff.
Okay, then maybe instead of saying how we got here, since maybe that's kind of obvious, maybe we should talk about the silver linings that you were just mentioning. Do we have opportunities right now? Like, let's just go straight to the positive. Where can we play roles?
I would say we have limitless opportunities now, anywhere from making butter all the way up to do we invest as a collective community in a glass manufacturing plant? I mean, we have Najib here from the wine industry. Where will they get their bottles now? Are they gonna buy them empty from Europe somewhere? Or can we dig up something and we used to have a glass making factory which was destroyed in 2006.
I'll answer you. You want me to answer you?
Yes, please.
I just joined. I'm telling you this week, and the team of Trois Collines they were briefing me about their activities. And I was so happy to hear their projects. Ziad Ammar, the owner, and Rabia Sada'a, the winemaker. It's a young team. It's a young team with plenty of ideas. And they have Dunya, our common friend, with Farah, and Wael, the agronomist, also taking care of I greet them all. They joined, I think. They are listening to us. And they came out with an idea, very old idea, of recycling bottles. They will initiate this week, the same week, starting mid next week, returnable bottles project, where they grant to the consumers who drop again their bottles, they give them like small gift in recognition to their act, to their effort, and they collect the bottles, doing the disinfection first, because today it's the big topic. Disinfection, cleaning, and reusing the bottles, because the bottles that are used by Trois Collines, they are very, very expensive, and they come also lighter glass. It's from a line that is called Eco line, lighter glass, cleaner glass, because the industry of glass, as Ziad was saying, it's a pity that we lost it in Lebanon. but the industry of glass is very heavy industry and very dirty one. You need to have very high temperature furnaces. You need to have non-stop furnaces going on. And we had two factories in Lebanon, and unfortunately both of them stopped. And this is why Lebanon today relies on the import of glass. And I would go even further, Ziad, asking about the cork. Yeah. Because today even the cork itself that we use in the wine industry is also imported. And it's a very difficult product to have. And it has to be green, labeled green. So this is, if you want to give you back the chat, sending the chat to you. So this is my reply.
Well, I mean, how bad is it right now? Because we had our garbage crisis once in 2015, granted other things that happened leading up to that. The state of the country right now, are we at a breaking point? Have we already broken? Like, how worried should people be given what's happening right now?
About just waste, you mean?
Yeah, in a general sense, not just winery specific, but like the waste of the country as a whole.
I mean, it seems they're going to continue business as usual. I mean, if they're throwing in the sea and nobody's complaining about it, they're just going to continue throwing in the sea. Europeans are okay with it. Lebanese are okay with it. And then at the end, they're going to use it. They're going to create another biel, another reclaimed land inside the sea. So it's also economic.
Pity.
It's a
What's
pity.
the biggest challenge you feel when it comes to trying to, counteract these things that are not really in our control, let's say?
I mean, I think waste management is just one facet of, one manifestation of the corruption we're talking about. It's one facet. If we see where is that common denominator between the corruption and waste management, the corruption and wastewater, corruption and just potable water, the corruption in public transportation, the list goes on, and you have a lot of corruption that we cannot see because waste management, we have this, how can I say, I don't want to say it's a positive thing, but it has this characteristic of being, you are able to see it, you're able to smell it, you're able to touch it.
Yeah.
This is why it was a big precursor and a big galvanizing, how can I say, like motivated people to go down on the streets in 2015. So it's not going to be solved alone. I think it needs to be solved as part of a bigger package of good governance. There's no other way.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say, I would say because I'm involved in this file in a very intimate way now. Their backs are against the wall when it comes to expanding the landfills. So any community where there's a landfill has totally refused to expand on the landfill. This is why the Council of Ministers just took a decision that they will allow Jdeidi landfill to stack waste for another 1 meter high, and after that, all bets are off. Doing that will give us about 3 months' time. Of course, 3 months' time doesn't allow you to really lay down a proper infrastructure. But where we're going with this is that decentralization will become the de facto way of doing business in the waste management. And what decentralization will do is that it will break the monopoly. Now you have a one political or two political figures monopolizing the waste management file. And it has been going from disaster to disaster. Now they will have to break the monopoly because no one will accept to landfill waste in their region anymore. So what we will go to is a decentralized plan on the Qada level. Each Qaza will have to deal with their own waste according to the regulations in place.
But will that be through private initiatives?
Say again?
Will that only be through private initiatives, or that would also be like
You know, there will definitely, the private sector will definitely need to get involved, because first of all, I think the government at the level of trust, the international trust that they have now is nearly zero. So no one will come and spend money now with the government. So what we are seeing is that we are being approached by international donors to initiate such projects. But again, we cannot initiate them unless there's a legal framework, because eventually your customers as a private sector will be the municipalities. And you will not be able to contract directly with the municipalities unless there is a waste management framework, legal framework to do that kind of contracts.
If you want, there is a trend now that on the individual level, that everybody is going to go farming on its own. This is, you're hearing that, you're listening to that. If we're talking wider than winery, as you said, as you requested, talking more about agriculture, today everybody is concerned and keen to secure his food. We're talking about food security now. So everybody is going to go, and even if they have a small plot of land, cultivate maybe 100 square meters, 200 square meters, maybe 0.1 hectare. So people will start doing this. And on the same level, we have to raise awareness that the same way people will start doing their own agriculture, people, they will have to start their own recycling, doing their own compost. Today, recycling in terms of garbage, we used to live, maybe most of us, we have an experience abroad. And coming back to Lebanon, you see that we do not recycling, having selective bins at home is very, very limited habit. So, but I think considering the current situation, people, they have to be more creative and they have to take the initiative of doing this, creating their own compost bins at home, because if they will have the agriculture use, they would need compost. I'm talking maybe on your field, Antoine, but it's so important to generate compost at home. If I want just to take the example of Trois Collines, Ziad was a man who's working in quarries, stone crushers. And one day he went and he wanted to buy a land to make a very big quarry for a very nice stone, like Côte de Provence marble. And he had with him consultants, and the consultants said to him, this land would be perfect for winemaking. And Ziad had no clue about winemaking. Because he was the whole of nature, he dropped his main core of activity and shifted 360 degrees, 180 degrees away from it, and wanted to learn about making wine, and created the winery and created the project. And this goes back very, very, very short time. It's only 6 years down the line, 6, 7 years down the line. So if people, they have the goodwill, if they are sensitive to the call of nature, if they are sensitive to what the crisis that is going on, creativity is just, as we say in French, at the tip of the fingers and au bout des doigts. And we can easily create a solution, recycling, providing ourselves with because after all, everything we are using in Lebanon to create our small micro world. We generate our own electricity, we generate our own water, so today we have the garbage solution has to come from us in order to protect our environment. This is my point of view.
I mean, I think it's credit should be given to these, business owners that maybe decide a business move that is probably less lucrative than something that is more maybe damaging to the environment, but on the long term is a better decision, not just for the planet, but also for their pockets. They see the payoff later on. It's just a lot harder to make that decision in the moment when you can see a bigger payoff on the short term. Antoine, I wanted to ask you, as far as the work with Foundation Diane, Do you see a change in how people are behaving over the last, let's say, 5 years, from the last garbage crisis till today? Have you felt like people were always looking for this, or that they are learning it as they go? And is there like kind of a spike now that, is there some kind of like feeling of, okay, now I need to take care of the planet, it's rejecting me as a species?
Okay. Well, I think if we do segmentation on two types of target audience, the first one being the wider public, and the second being on the natural leaders or natural entrepreneurs, I would say that by experience, I'm seeing that leaders or naturally leaders and entrepreneurs are tending to use the crisis as a catalyzer to start working faster, cooperating with other people, and finding potential solutions that are also financially viable. This is, yes, I'm seeing, especially with what we call millennials, more than other segments in the society. When it comes to the general public, it's not as pronounced. There are definitely some people that are just fed up, and they're trying to do something good and trying to do the right thing, but it's not like a trend that can just change the whole game in Lebanon. So as we were talking before we started, that I think that in our society and in other societies, we need to find, develop, and commercialize solutions that are not depending on just the sensitivity of the general public. They need to be financially viable. Now, people, especially in countries that are insecure when it comes to water, electricity, food, health, what they're thinking of is not self-realization, like thinking of something else, thinking about the planet, about the animals. They're just thinking about the day-to-day survival. And when an environmental solution just comes in as a financially viable option, they will do it. Other than that, I would not bet on just people just waking up right now, just talking pragmatically.
Yeah, it has to be financially motivated, since that's the main concern everybody is dealing with right now. Ziad, how do you feel as far as how you've seen things shift, maybe since your TEDx Beirut talk about, what was it, 6 years ago, up until today? Do you feel like more people are engaged in the conversation, and is it actually like translating in the real world, or is it all just kind of like, labels and stickers and words without any action behind it?
No. The waste crisis of 2015 was a wake-up call for a lot of people, a lot of like civilian people, not people involved in the decision making of the waste management file. Everybody now is aware that we have a major waste crisis. What we are saying now is that due to the currency devaluation, we as a community we're producing less waste because we're consuming less. We have lost a lot of our purchase power. We see it in our recycling plant in Beit Miri. We're comparing months of like 2020 to the same period of 2019, 2018, 2017. And we see drops of about 40 to 50 tons per month of less waste generated by the same exact population. So the issue here is a bit bigger than we have the waste back on the streets. We have the waste back on the streets because of ill governance. This system, this political system in Lebanon is not viable anymore, and we will only, what we are living right now is the denial of the political class that they cannot go on, okay? And eventually they will die off as a political class. They will die off. This is nature. This is how nature works. You cannot linger on and on. When you are dying, you are dying. You're gonna dry up and you're gonna come back as dust, like they say.
You know, so many
So-
people will refute that and say that it's such a deeply entrenched system, that it's not just those heads that are running things. It's so like ingrained in how we behave, and in all the different sectors and different industries. There's, you know, there's corruption that is so deeply seated in just how people interact with each other and how we get things done across the country. وبيسموا الواحد شاطر if like they know how to maneuver through that.
But the driver behind that was money. It was economics. You know, you had cash. You had cash, and you engage in all kinds of corrupt behavior. It was virtual cash, because for the last 30 years كنا عايشين بالخسة. يعني when banks, international banks, were offering 1% or 0.5% or 1.2% interest rates, our central bank was offering 6 and 7%. And back then, when you ask, how come? What are you relying on? What kind of treasure of gems you are hiding so that you are attracting this kind of interest rates? You know, people were talking about the Lebanese miracle. Turned out the Lebanese miracle was the Lebanese nightmare on 13th Street. Yani. So now we have to wake up. The problem is that crisis lingered so long, you know, it brought down everybody with them. For me now, as an industrial engineer who wants to invest in side industries of recycling, now we decided as a company we're gonna go into food farming. You know, intensive, organic, vertical food farming. My problem is now I don't have a bank that I can trust, that I can rely on. So now the first stepping stone would be to re-establish the banking sector. You know, all these, you know, we don't need 60,000 banks. You know, eventually we're gonna need 6 or 7, and they don't have to have their boutique branches. You know, look, صار في بنوكي أكتر ما صار في محلات فلافل. So, you know, eventually we need to wake up, نظهر من الخسة, and then, you know, there are basics of business that you cannot evade. You cannot evade. You cannot create something out of nothing. You know, there is always those golden rule principles that you have to follow. بس بكل بساطة. And everything else we're doing right now is we are losing time. بس عم نضيع وقت على الفاضي.
Yeah. Najib, I wanted, on this note of running a business, maybe you can tell us about how Chateau Trois Collines is trying to maybe like reposition or really shift all entire focus. I mean, they've always communicated themselves as a very like ethically focused winery, but do they feel even more like motivated now that like, yeah, this is obviously the way to go, since the entire world is now seeing like there is no other option?
First of all, let me put maybe a brighter picture that something is waiting for you guys as soon as you finish with your lockdown. We'll take you all to the region of Ain Bourdai in Baalbek. It's opposite to the Bacchus, your Bacchus, Farah. It's opposite to the Bacchus temple at some 1,500 meters altitude. A very fresh site, an exceptional site. I fell in love with the site the moment I visited, because in wine business, you have the raw material is the key. You have good grapes, you have good soil, then you can make good wine. If you don't have a good soil, you can make nothing out of it. So we're talking about garbage. So there is a say, rubbish in, rubbish out. But if you want to put something valuable to make good wine, you have to have excellent grapes. And this is where Trois Collines bet on their vineyard in the first place. So they prepared the slopes in such a way they didn't even return the soil. They used the soil with no terraces. I invite you to visit the website to see it pictures. There are some drone taken pictures, organic, from all practices, cultural practices, manual harvest, to the winemaking itself. It's all conducted naturally. Solar panels to use for the energy use, for the same size of winery. It's a location for the winery of Trois-Collines, because even this site helps saving energy, because during winemaking you need to maintain the temperature of the fermentation at certain levels. So in Dahr al-Baydar, there is no need to cool because it's freshly cooled. During the harvest period, October, it's already cold up there. So we can have optimum temperature for winemaking. So all this setup, from the slopes, the soil, everything is promising to give in a very natural way an exceptional product that is quality certified. By the way, we gained very lately, 2 months ago, the ISO certification, making Trois-Collines the youngest winery in Lebanon to obtain all these certifications in a very, very short period of time, because everything is done by the book and with the goodwill of preserving the environment. Because doing wine, you are associated to nature. You have to give back to nature. You have to really consider that, I say, this is a nice story, that grape trees are like humans. They like to stay, they are very wise, like to be in a fresh environment, and they are very honest to themselves and to the soil. What you give them in the soil, they return it to you under shape of grapes. So this is why usually in Lebanon we go to very high altitude to cultivate the grape trees. And today, the byproducts of the wine itself. You heard that most of the problems of Litani River, they come from industrial. Ziad and Antoine, you are surely aware of this. They come from industrial agro-food industries that are not really processing their wastewater. They don't have a wastewater management. So, but being an organic winery, even the enological product that you use, they are certified organic, so they are biodegradable. And when they are in the water, they are biodegradable themselves. So it's a whole chain where you have to return to nature. And this is why it's so important, the issue of glass bottles is so important, because when we're drinking, consuming, we generate a lot of waste, a lot of byproducts from industry to consumption. So today, I hope that this crisis will help us to be more aware about our behavior, because the outcome is clear. If we do not take good care of nature, at one day it will reach like a dead end. And today, raising awareness through agriculture, when people are aware of agriculture, this is why the extension services in agriculture, that when people are aware of when they are farmers themselves, the mentality change. When you start thinking of producing your own food and so on, your mentality will change. So this is my point.
Antoine, you wanted to answer a question. I see that you marked it as something you would answer. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask off of this, because I know that Ziad, you supply organic fertilizer to a lot of the wineries across the valley and across the country. What are other ways that maybe you guys could collaborate in some sense with other wineries? What are the areas of opportunity for wineries, not just Chateau Trois Collines, but also others, where they could possibly improve their methods and make their business more eco-friendly? Or what are the things they're not doing that they could do better on both of your levels of expertise? Like, where's something maybe you can do personally, or you know of a certain practice they should implement, maybe you don't know how to do, but you've heard of, something like that.
Anna, personally, I'm working with the court of.
Uh-oh.
Ziad, we lost you.
No.
Uh-oh. It might be kahraba. I think it's been happening one by one. هلا دورك أنطوان بعدين بينقطع عنك.
I mean, the question that was sent is about the practical I mean, what can we practically do when it comes to land use and also how to recycle glass. But I would like to see also from Najib. Let's start. I think we can start from Najib. What type of waste do you generate, and what is typically the things you do with them when we're talking about the organic waste that goes out from the fermentation, from all the process that you go through?
The waste that is generated usually in a winery is mainly from crushing the grapes. We're talking about the stalk, يعني العرموشي, the skeleton that holds the grape seeds. So the stalk is an excellent livestock fodder, and some people use it as fertilizer. Some other Ziad is back. If you want to give him the word again, Farah.
Continue,
Sorry.
and then we can shift back. I don't want to cut off anybody.
So the drag يعني الطفل كمان يلي بيطلع من from the winemaking process. You have a certain drag that sediments, that percolates, and this drag is also very high in proteins. So it's also used as a fodder for livestock. The other waste is the water that comes from the tanks when you're doing a lot of washing. This depends if you're using detergent and what kind of detergent you use in order, and this is the biggest volume of water that goes. So if you have certified detergents and cleaning stuff, this reduces a lot. If you use just very strong acidic detergents, this is very, very polluting. And all these, when you're having an ISO certification, you have to abide by the products that you buy, where you purchase them, and you have on the labeling if you can use them and in which proportions and so on. So how to say, the products, sorry?
So what do you do with the wastewater?
Wastewater usually you have like ponds that you have to throw the water there where it percolates and you filter. You have to have a filtering process that goes, so the water that goes away, you can either reuse it in irrigation or in other purposes. Okay. So these are mainly the byproducts of winemaking. It's very limited. It's very limited.
It's cutting a bit.
Sorry,
I'm not getting all of that.
I was asking if you have a significant amount of methanol as a byproduct, and what do you do with it? Do you stack it? No, it's very limited.
We are not yet into the alcohol production. We are not yet into the arak production. The distillery is a unit that is to come, but it's not yet operational. Methanol is when you start distilling that it comes out, because levels of alcohol in fermentation are not very, very high. So you have only ethanol in wines. You have many, many components of alcohol, but not methanol into the fermentation process. Methanol usually is an outcome of distillation. So we're not yet there. But we are developing a distillery to produce arak. And the solution, the friendly, eco-friendly solution for it is definitely will come along with it in order to preserve our organic label and our ISO label.
And my last question would be about, do you produce your own compost on site? If not, do you buy compost? Do you do any treatment that is organic when it comes to providing the nutrients for your vines?
As far as I know, Trois Collines, they purchase manures and compost. Okay. They purchase, but I don't have the exact brand name or source. But if you want, I can search it for you and provide you an answer later.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Ziad, do you want to jump in with what we were about to discuss?
I was talking about wastewater treatment. You know that I had been appointed. I'm still appointed by the court of Zahle as a technical expert on the Litani pollution cases, and we, oddly enough, we're also designing a biological pond system for a wastewater treatment for a winery, which I will not name tonight, but the beauty of that project would be is that you are tying wastewater management into an ecotourism organic farming project where I mean, all the byproducts of wineries are polluting. I mean, the level of alcohol that you put in your effluents has a powerful demand on oxygen, and you cannot put it back into nature unless you bring up the oxygen levels to an acceptable level as regulated. But it's not nuclear science. I mean, you know, most of wineries rely on a natural fermentation process. If you don't use heavy chemicals, and if you do proper waste management, wastewater management using biological methods, you can build something really nice around what used to be a problem. So, so this is what I was, I mean, I think for wineries now, their packaging is more of a headache for them, acquiring it, and then, you know, I'm sure now an empty bottle of wine, if you have to import it, will cost you somewhere around $1, $1.50. And at the new exchange rate, so that's about £5,000 just going for a bottle.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know that we still have an initiative called the Green Glass Recycling Initiative for Lebanon, and where we are collecting all types of glass, and we are working with the glass blowers of Sarafand to turning these packages. But lately, with the devaluation, we as a company decided that, you know, we also operate what we call the street recycling bins project. We have recycling bins that we place around the city, and now we are getting funding to double our presence. So we're gonna go from 16 locations to 32 locations.
Wow.
And we decided that any wine company or any winery that would get in touch with us, we will give them back their bottles for free. Okay? The problem is now is that we don't, you know, there are so many winemakers, is that we don't know which bottles are for whom. But I'm working on a system with our guys that are working on the glass recycling project, we will stop, we were turning glass into sand. We have, we did invest in a sanding line, and we will still produce sand from glass, but not from wine bottles. We will give back the wine bottles for free. Okay, for any winery that would want to partake in the project, they would give us the specs and what are the bottles, and we will sort it for them, again, for free. All they have to do is
there a way that they can mark them, maybe? Like, I mean, not obviously the labels, but
I'm not sure how. I know there is a pretty standard wine bottle, which we, and I've seen that are a few wineries that use the same one. I think Najib Hone can
I will tell you.
Point us into a more lighted way.
How do you ensure that they don't break, though?
Oh, the breakage. This is what we will. This is what we will transform into sand, or we will give to the glass blowers. But all the one-piece bottles we will sort, and we will have a. We will ask people, we'll ask wineries to come pick up their bottles back. Yeah. And we also even researched that there is a very good and very efficient and very affordable way of sanitizing these bottles is by using hydrogen peroxide. If you wash them with hydrogen peroxide, they are good to go.
Yes. If you want me to answer you, Ziad, there are 2 to 3 main suppliers for wineries in Lebanon. They are Saint-Gobain and Veralia, two Italian suppliers and 2 French suppliers. So some of the wineries, they use the same bottles. They have shapes and contents in common, 75 cl mainly, and glass thickness. The heavier glass is used for premium wines. The more expensive is the wine, the thicker is the glass, in order to last longer, the aging and the standing, the handling in the cellar. So, but you can trace them. If they lose the label, you can classify them by content, you can classify them by weight. And it's a very good project, because if the economic crisis will persist, many of the wineries will have the problem, especially the small wineries, the small scale wineries who are not very good in export, because those who are good in export, they have accounts abroad. But those who do not have export, they are still relying on the local market, and they cannot provide themselves, let's say, channels to pay in foreign currencies and so on. So it's a very good project. Both for the environment and for the wineries. And count us in.
Yeah, sure. I will look for your bottles. Next time I'm on site, I will look for the Troacolin bottles.
I will send you samples.
No, I prefer to dig it up from waste.
I mean, you're getting a lot right now. Do you feel like, just from the recycles, are you feeling like people are drinking more?
Well, I wish they are, actually. I hope so. It would be really bad. You have to go into such a deep crisis and you're sober all the time. So thank God they legalized hashish as well. So now you have your options are open.
You have
not that kind, but yeah.
No, wine consumption is increasing regardless of the crisis and so on. And it's a good thing, because wine consumption, you do not drink usually wine when you're alone. You drink wine when you're in good company, when you're having a good meal. So wine is a very sociable drink. And I think the lockdown favored a lot the wine consumption and the good family gatherings.
Well, I guess as time went by, they went to a stronger alcohol.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. One is about whether or not you have worked on a zero waste initiative at some point in this country. Compost Balade works with composting. Do you know of any company initiatives or lobbying that is going for single-use materials or packaging so that we wouldn't need to recycle in the first place?
Well, you know, Beit Miri has become the first zero waste town in Lebanon.
Sorry, not single-use, multiple-use. But yeah, you got me.
No, I'm talking about the recycling aspect. Beit Miri, since September 2016, we've established a recycling plant there. It operates under the zero waste philosophy. We don't throw away anything. And then the municipality is doing efforts as well of encouraging local grocery shops to cut down on plastic bags and encourage the use of textile bags and stuff like that. But then again, you know, when the economic crisis hit, you cannot be too picky with citizens. You know, most people, you know, half of our population now is living under the poverty line. So you know, telling them, you know, don't abuse plastic bags is the least of their concerns right now.
Yeah. Yeah, Antoine was mentioning this before we started, that, you know, the hierarchy of needs, recycling and reusing is very low on the priority scheme. How do you see, as far as from Compost Balade and Raimundo, have you seen interesting initiatives being born even throughout all of this? And what do you see on that front?
I would like to first say two things. The first one is just when it comes to, we also talked before starting that the economy is now a linear economy. You extract, you transform, you sell, you throw, and then you do the same again. And the recycling is just you're making it a bit longer. You know, the process takes a bit much longer. The PET bottle becomes a shirt, and then the shirt becomes something to clean the window with, and then that sheet of cloth ends up either burnt or in the landfill. So recycling theoretically is just giving a product a longer shelf life, but not solving the problem. Theoretically, it's not gonna solve now the problem, but just to mention it during this discussion, that we need to arrive to a point where we have a circular economy. It's something we're really lagging on. Just today, internally in Fondation Diane, we were talking about the legal framework in Lebanon for financing for green investment. It's basically non-existent. The circular economy and green investment in law, it's very limited. It's only in like loans through banks and some loans through certain organizations. The second point I would like also to mention is that maybe because Najib mentioned something about the packaging being degradable, it's really something important to notice that unfortunately most plastics do not really, unless they're really compostable in your backyard, they are to be avoided when it comes to really being environmental friendly. Unfortunately, a lot of plastic are labeled oxo-biodegradable, meaning that they disintegrate, they physically become smaller. Instead of having one bag that is made out of LDPE, let's say, or HDPE, you end up having a billion smaller pieces of plastic that are uncontrollable going into the water stream or into the soil or even in the air. So it is really important to know what type of plastic. If it says compostable, make sure that it's not only in an industrial setting, because not all plastic will end up, for example, at Ziad's facility or at another facility that composts on.
There are no compostable plastics in Lebanon. Let's agree on that. No one is importing compostable plastic pellets. Okay, this is one. All this D2W shit is just shit. Okay, it is it's just, you know, everybody wanted to feel safe and green or what have you, and they say our bags are compostable or degradable. They're not. Exactly. What D2W is doing is making the problem worse, and we are actively working on having it banned. It should not be added to any of the plastic. Plastic is a wonderful material. Please, let's not get confused here. Plastic is a wonderful material. Technology of processing plastics is making leaps. Antoine mentioned PET. PET now is not the only thing you do with PET. Is not just shirts anymore.
an example.
We are using PET fiber panel boards to grow bacteria on, and we are using those panel boards with bacteria in wastewater treatment systems, and they last for 400 years. Okay, so now the PET issue is solved. The other plastics issue are going to be solved.
But what's the
Dumping
issue with
plastic in a landfill
D2W?
or in an incinerator is a crime. Say again, Farah.
What's the issue with D2W though? What's the, just for people who don't speak?
The point. It's D2W is basically the oxo-biodegradable plastic. It's you have 99% of the material being a certain type of plastic. Let's say it is LDPE, low density polyethylene. Then you have 1% of the whole mass or weight being an additive. Usually it's a metallic salt. It used to include heavy metals. Now some of them are not heavy metal, but still it's an additive that's not that environmental. So as to the point that Ziad also was talking about, D2W is one brand of those oxo-biodegradable plastics that actually are not helping with the plastic becoming the biomass we all want. You know, it goes to integrate in nature. The other types that are called biodegradable, you have them, but the difference between them and compostable plastics or compostable material in general is that they take longer period of time than compostable material, which is longer than 180 days, which in the EU is the limit to say if a product is compostable or not in an industrial setting, which is six months. So biodegradability also is a big question mark. How long? Does it take 20 years? Then it's not a solution. I need something that actually, if you throw it in the backyard or in a composting industrial setting, that it turns actually to biomass, CO2, and water. So this is just a point for, because Najib mentioned it and it rang, because just the other day I had a webinar about it, specifically about plastic versus and biodegradability. And it seems a lot of people are very interested because they're confused with this marketing trick that whenever you see it's biodegradable, I mean, plastic chemically is an organic material. It comes from the oil from below the earth, which is degraded.
It's a carbon polymer.
Degraded animals, degraded vegetables, and it's made out of chains of carbon and hydrogen. This is basically the definition of organic. But since it's synthetic, it's taking ages. Like Ziad said, some plastics take up to 500 years to go back to their original elements, which is absurd. But also, on the positive side, they're helping us to stay safe when we're eating because you're not spoiling the food. But just a point, because plastic is a big issue, and eventually, there should be an alternative, and people now are, and scientists are producing plastic out of bacteria, not bacteria producing lactic acid and the lactic acid being developed into a polylactic acid. No, they're directly producing plastics out of it. We're producing plastic out of chitin from crustaceous waste. We're producing, all of these are alternative. Hopefully in the next few decades, hopefully they will become commercialized enough to be available for all of us, including Najib's product and other products. Now, to answer your question about if we're seeing initiatives in Lebanon about, that was the question, right, about composting on a small level from entrepreneurs. If I got your question right, Farah?
Yeah. And other possible things that people are doing as far as whether it's zero waste or coming up with new products, or at least maybe having that mindset when they go into something.
Well, let me start with Compost Baladi since we're talking about composting. Compost Baladi is seeing a surge in the demand for compost. It's unprecedented for the company. We also have in the company clients that are wineries, providing them with compost and providing them with compost tea, which is also a product that could be used as a biopesticide, as well as consulting them on what to plant to create something called green manure, which is producing or planting certain plants that fix nitrogen from the air. As you know, 80% of the air is N2, nitrogen, and then the bacteria with these typical plants, they turn this N2 into ammonium, and the ammonium is available for the plants. Then you put the plant in the soil, and it's available for the vine, for example. This is what Compost Baladi is doing. On the other side, for Raimondo, we are seeing a lot of initiatives on how to turn organic waste into wellness products. And talking about wellness product, I think also the waste coming out of wineries, specifically, I think polyphenols are very interesting products for wellness products. This is something that I'm keeping on the side as a potential entrepreneurship project at Raymondo to check how much is it viable. The second one is the use of methanol from fermentation. Like also we talked with Najib. I know that a lot of big wineries they're stacking them. They are a hazard, for safety hazard, and they need to have a solution for them. I've seen also small initiatives, not on organic, but mostly on waste. Like Ziad mentioned, also there are a couple of people doing crushing glass into fine powder, what we call sand, to make it easier for people to understand, and using it in mixes as an aggregate or an element in cement, concrete. And some of them are crushing it into cullets, meaning small pieces that also go as aggregate or as backfilling in construction and roads and stuff like that. There are initiatives, but we need to make them on a bigger scale for them to have really the big impact we want. There are hundreds of millions of bottles thrown every year, and I'm pretty sure also Ziad, since he worked on this initiative he just mentioned, the grill, he knows how much this is a big resource. And also Najib now knows how much importing new bottles is a big problem. So we need to find, since we're meeting now and we're talking about discussion, I'm hoping that maybe a synergy could be created and a new initiative could be started, or somebody listening today could also reach out for me and start something new, because I mean, this is an issue that is easily financially viable because of the volume and because of the high quality of the molecules and elements present in the waste. It's unbelievable, especially in the winery. I'm not gonna talk longer. This is my input.
No, we're pretty much out of time, but there is one question left, and then I'm gonna have to end it because we're already past an hour. The last question goes back to Najib, I think. The concept of wine in carton boxes, especially for vin de table, so less volume, easily recyclable, less air in the bag after pouring. I assume this might be like a marketing problem, because so many people have this concept in their head that wine has to come in a bottle. If you see it in a box, it's a cheap, low quality crap. Yeah, it has to have all those fluffy elements to make it something worth buying and drinking. But this could be something that people consider, especially now with the plummeting purchasing power. Maybe that is something that wineries can look into, even if it's not something that's very aesthetically pleasing or traditional.
Wine consumption goes through certain maturity of consumers. Consumers start first with the classical behavior of consumption, using the bottle and the uncorking and so on. But once people reach that maturity and the wine gets integrated really in your daily consumption, then we call this a bag in a box, BIB. The bag in a box is where the wine is under vacuum, and we use no glass, no cork, only a plastic bag that is well sealed with a tap. When you press the tap, the wine goes out and no air goes inside. So the wine is preserved. And as you said, when you're a boutique winery with small scale production, bag in a box is a very expensive investment for you to do. You need to make it really feasible. You need to go into high volumes. And because, and people need to have, let's say, their purchasing power. Instead of buying unit, let's say people buy a bottle, then you're buying 5 liters or 3 liters minimum.
So it's not necessarily cheaper.
Yes, the consumption has to change, especially when you go into good quality wines. Putting them in a bag in a box, is sometimes difficult. But I think it will come. And some wineries already in Lebanon, they have this technology, but it was not revealed successful on the market, no big demand. And if it stays long on the shelf, it has a limited life. And most of these wines, they are not vintage wines. They don't carry a year. So because this is why you call them vin de table, because they are the basic quality entry level. So
which means their shelf life is very short.
There is still a long way to go researching this. But as you said, it might be a solution in the short run if the crisis continues and the recycling issue is glass availability and so on is more dominant.
Okay.
Farah, somebody asked about the Blender composting. I don't know if we did.
If you want to go ahead and answer that, and then I'll have to wrap it up.
The question very quickly, yeah. No, I mean, if I think they mean like just putting food inside a blender with water and then throwing it in the soil or under a plant. If that's what they mean, I mean, it could be a solution, but for a very small, limited amount of food, because we're not composting it that way, in the sense that we're adding also carbon to it. The better idea would be, yes, put water, blend it, but mix it also while throwing it, maybe with any type of shredded paper, sawdust, wood shavings, anything that is high in carbon, and then cover it with soil to make sure no animal dig it up from the soil. I think that would be the ideal for that specific question, the blender composting.
Okay.
Is
there anything else? Anything else we want to jump into before, because we're over an hour now.
Question, see if there's anything about composting or Melody or Raymond or something like that. I think no.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. This was a very rich conversation. I think a lot of people have a lot to share now and a lot to talk about, and might have some ideas, and a few might reach out to you guys to collaborate on some projects, I hope. If not, you guys should collaborate on some interesting things.
Definitely.
Together. So thank you so much for joining tonight. I know everybody's in lockdown, so maybe this gave them some inspiration. And I really want to say I appreciate all the work you're all doing as far as trying to improve what's going on right now. It's definitely a group effort and a team effort. It's not something we can do alone. So thank you very much. And thank you for joining. And thank you to those who tuned in today.
Thank you, Farah, for organizing.
Thank you. Nice meeting you guys. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.